Hey listener, I have something really exciting to share with you. On January 9th, 2021, I'll be putting on a free summit on turning your pain into power. Why am I telling you about that in this episode? Because today's guest, Taylor Proctor, will be one of those speakers. She and a few other speakers will join me in this free summit to help you know how you can get unstuck, turn your pain into power, and live your best life. So be sure to check out the website yourpainintopower.com to get more information and to grab your free ticket. Besides that, I'll tell you more information about this summit in next week's episode, but go to that website, get your free ticket, and we'll see you there. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Champions of Self podcast. My name is Ben Eden, your host, and today I get to welcome Taylor Proctor. She is a transformational happiness mentor. Hello, Taylor. How are you?
Hi, Ben. I'm so excited and so honored to be here.
Glad to have you. Why don't you tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am a transformational happiness mentor, and that's the kind of thing that you just don't stumble into. You have to have a little bit of experience in transforming your own life into one of what I had was anger, bitterness, fear, resentment, and really a sadness that I had in my life, and I couldn't get over it. And then I was able to do a couple of key things, which we'll talk about here today, I'm sure, to be able to transform my life to be actually the happy and really overjoyed person that I am today. And so I help other people go through that as well. I work with my mentoring clients on a scale of 1 to 10. When they first start working with me, they usually come in at about a 2 or a 3, which is coincidentally where I was before I started my happiness journey. And at the end of our time working together, they're a 7, 8, 9, and sometimes even a 10. And so I love being able to help people find their happiness in their own lives. And I'm excited to share a little bit about that journey with you today.
Good. You put it very well. For those of you watching the YouTube video, you can tell that Taylor is very happy by her big smile. Hopefully you can hear it in her voice through the podcast. So, and one thing I'd like that you mentioned, Taylor, is that you named some specific emotions that you were going through, right? And then how you were able to understand them so that you could choose happiness instead. So why don't we dive into that story of yours?
Yeah. So honestly, I don't have one of those childhoods that was super traumatic or anything crazy happened to me. I was a normal kid. I was happy. I was hyper. I was outgoing. And as I went into adulthood, life kind of kicked me around like it can do sometimes. And I had an early marriage and a even earlier divorce. But I was married young, got a divorce young. Also had some other things happen. I ended up moving out of state without like a family or a support base, and that really kind of took its toll. I also had a nephew in our family who was 3 years old and killed by a drunk driver. And so there was a lot of things that happened to me as I was in a young adult area of my life that really habitualized these emotions of anger and sadness. And there were things that just happened over time, but because I didn't really deal with them and I had to be strong and not show that I was really sad or that I was really hurt, I just really put on this mask of anger. And I would be angry at everything. And I love that you said, hey, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see her great big smile, because I was not like this. I was so just mean and resentful. I can't even stress resentful enough. I was so mad at everybody and everything. And I was frustrated all the time. I found myself putting off the things that were important to me because I just wanted to be angry at the world. I was scared. I was surrounded in chaos, and I didn't know what to do. And I had gotten married again to my husband that I'm with now. And I was with him and we were talking, and I would be angry all the time. And he finally said to me, so what happened to you? Because he actually knew me when I was younger. He goes, what happened to you? You used to be so happy. And that was like, oh, right? To have your spouse say, like, you're really angry all the time and it's not very cool, in his own gentle and nice way. But my brain started going in this space of, okay, well, if I keep this up, probably not going to have a marriage. If I keep this up, I really am unhappy and I am angry all the time. And I don't I don't want to live this way. And so I looked at my life and went, what is the thing that I want? And I realized I just wanted to be happy. And I also wanted to feel at peace, because I felt like I was at constant battle. I was in this warrior mode of being angry all the time. And if I wasn't angry, I was sad. And I didn't like being sad. So I protect that again with anger. I just felt like this constant battle and being at war with myself. And I just wanted peace and happiness. And so I started looking at why I wasn't happy and what was going on there. And like I said, these habits that I had, these emotions that I had become habit. I jumped to anger instantaneously. I didn't stop to look at my emotions. I didn't stop and pull back and go, well, wait a minute, what's really going on here? I would just be mad. So I had to really take a look at what was holding me back from happiness and peace. And I realized that there were two key beliefs that I had that were holding me back. And the first one was that I believed happiness was inherent. Therefore, when I was angry and I kept on backtracking, every time I tried to be happy, I couldn't, or I would be happy for a few minutes and something would set me off. I felt like I was wrong or I was broken, because it seemed like everybody else was happy and happiness is inherent. So what's wrong with me? And then that fed the sadness, which then I would try to protect and get angry, right? And so it was this cycle. But I realized that if I could change that belief and that expectation that happiness is inherent, that would change a lot of things. So I started to look at it like, maybe happiness isn't inherent. The desire to be happy is, but happiness itself can be a learned skill. And that brought it back into my wheelhouse, where I'm like, if it's a learned skill, I can learn how to do this. I can start that direction and learn into it versus just expect it to be there. Then the second experience and expectation that I had was, I felt like I was striving for all of these things and I was meeting this societal checklist. So it was like, the checklist is you go get the degree, you have the nice house, the beautiful car, the wonderful spouse, the happy family, the money in the bank account, the corner office, or the successful business. And then you'll be successful by society standards. And therefore, in our mind, somehow that equals happiness. Mm-hmm. We're looking at success equaling happiness versus the reality, which is happiness equaling success. And so when I was able to go, wait a minute, I'm striving for this checklist and I'm mad that I'm not feeling happy because I've been told that this will make me happy. If I look at that checklist, I can go, well, I can still strive. I can still do these things, but I want to do it because I want it. And because it's what will help me feel happy in my life, not because I'm expecting it to make me happy. And those two core beliefs, as soon as I could switch them around, I could start looking at my emotional habits. And really, that's when I transformed my life. And I look back now and it feels like I was a completely different person. And I really was. But I look back and I go, wow, it's so interesting to have been there and to see the transformation in my own life. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a happiness mentor too, because I know that there's people out there, and I know you have kind of a similar journey with the societal checklist and things like that. And so there's people out there that are like us that want to be happy and want to feel that peace. And I was like, why take my 5 to 7 year journey and have somebody else do it for longer or that same time frame? Why not take everything that I have learned and put it in a way where you can implement it in as short as 10 weeks and see that transformation? So that's how I became a happiness mentor. And that's really my story, from anger and frustration and chaos and putting off my goals to being happy and overjoyed and full of peace and getting stuff done and living my dream life.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. A couple things I wanted to go into. You had mentioned that you had to be strong to the point where I can't feel everything else, or maybe I can't reach out to others because I just have to be strong. Can you tell us where that idea came from?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I was raised to not cry, just because for whatever reason, that's how it was. So we were not supposed to cry. So it was always covering those sad emotions, and anger was acceptable. And if you look at it too, even in our society today, let's take out of the being raised, but just look at society. Anger is an acceptable emotion. Sadness is not. When you look at people who post on, like, say, Facebook about how they're having a bad day, there's support there, but not as much as if somebody's incensed over something and they're outraged and then everybody jumps on that bandwagon, right?
Yeah,
so
good point.
Anger is societally acceptable. Sadness is not. So of course I was going to go to anger because that's that's a strength thing, and it looks like it's a strength thing. And I was also kind of raised that that's the emotion that's acceptable. These other ones, we don't really look at those. We don't deal with those. And so that was a big part of it. But also I viewed, and I no longer anymore, but I viewed at the time that if you were feeling sad or you were feeling down, that was feeling stuck, and that was vulnerable, and therefore in my mind at the time weak. And so I had to be strong, therefore I had to be in that warrior space, and that warrior emotion is usually anger.
Well said. I'm glad the way that you're explaining this, using the terms and doing it logically so people can understand. I think this will be very valuable for a lot of people, because like what you said at the beginning, you mentioned, well, I didn't have, let's say a tough childhood, as it were, right? Maybe the big traumas and those kinds of things didn't happen to me. And yet you still went through a period of life where you didn't know exactly how to deal with the emotions. So you chose a couple to protect yourself with. You hid your sadness, which needed to be felt so that you could learn some things and then have room for happiness and joy. You hid that with anger, because it was societally acceptable. Maybe you learned it in your family. Maybe it was easier. Maybe it was the warrior. Exactly. Everything that you're saying, I think that's so valuable for people to realize and relate with. Anything more you want to share on that? And then I have a next question.
No, I mean, I totally agree. There's so many, and I'm going to say like us, as in me, because anger is a habit and a template. So there are still times, even after all these years of working on stuff, where I'm like, ooh, that just made me so mad. And I get mad so quickly. And then I'm like, whoa, is this who I want to be? Is this what I want my life to be like? And I'm like, no, it's not. And then I can use the tools and things that I have in place to help me get there. So if anybody who is feeling that way and is like, yeah, I didn't have the traumatic childhood, but I just have these habits and I'm unhappy, it is totally possible to shift that and to experience the other side, and then make the conscious decision instead of habitually act in a certain way.
Very good. So one more thing. Your now husband said, well, he knew you before and of course now, and he said something changed about you. So you mentioned the anger was hiding sadness. Sadness often means something is missing in our lives. Now that you can look back on what you went through, can you pinpoint either what happened or what led you towards hiding the sadness with anger? What were you missing?
It's interesting. I actually view that a little differently. I don't see it as something missing, but I see it as anger is a blanket emotion to these other feelings, which were like fear, shame, guilt, things like that. And I would say the biggest one that was causing a gaping hole, right? So it's not missing, it was definitely there, but it was causing a hole in my life, was fear. I was afraid of what was going to happen. I mean, if you look at it, I'd been through a divorce very young. I had lost family members. I had moved out on my own, kind of gotten kicked around a little bit there. Money was not easy to come by. There was a time where I was choosing between gas and food, right? And so there's a fear of like, I didn't want to go back to those spaces, but I'd never worked through them or understand how I had gotten out of them. And so there was the fear there that was causing the hole. And I didn't want to look at that hole and go, what's down in there? Oh, wow. Okay. We got a couple of things we got to work through. Instead, I was just like, I'm just going to cover that with a lid of anger, and we're never going to look at it again. And so I can't necessarily pinpoint it to one single thing that led me to that point, but I can pinpoint that when my husband said that, I realized that I wanted and needed a change. And I wasn't wanting it because he wanted it for me. I wanted it because I realized this is not what I want my life to look like. And I think so many of us get there, right? Whether it's a spouse telling us, or we're just like, wow, we look around and go, is this really what I want for myself? And at that point, that's the time to take the anger or whatever it is, take that manhole cover off of that hole and go, okay, what are we working with here? And how can we fix it in a way where we can live our dream life and not pretend it's not there? Because that suppression is not working anymore.
There you go. So, and thank you for being vulnerable with that, Taylor. I wanted to show everybody a very quick example of asking deeper questions about the emotion all of a sudden reveals some more specifics. Just like you said, If it is the fear of not being good enough, not being loved, all that kind of stuff, because of things that had happened, I'm not sure of the future, whatever the specifics are, you didn't want to deal with them. So yes, you tried to cover them with that emotion. And that happens to all of us. Whether it's from childhood or just through life, right? College didn't work out. My major was so confusing. I broke up with somebody that was the love of my life. My grandparents didn't connect with me the way I wanted to. I just got fired. Whatever it is, right?
Right.
And exactly like you said, if we just try to move on and be strong, because that's how we were raised, no crying, anger only serves its purpose so much, whatever, then yeah, those feelings still exist, but they're unresolved. So then they're covered, just waiting to come out. So the next thing I wanted to move on with is, you had mentioned that one day you stopped and said, what will happen if I do nothing about this? Maybe you didn't use those words, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen with everybody. It helps a lot. A lot of people don't like to take the time to slow down and say, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Yada, yada. But if you think, well, what will happen if I do nothing about it? Am I going to be okay living the way I'm living for the next 2, 5, 10 years? Angry, unable to connect, and maybe hurting the ones I love? If you can sit in that pain and discomfort, then they'll do exactly what you did and say, absolutely not. I'm going to do what's necessary to overcome that emotional pain and make room for the positive or more desirable emotions that I want. Correct?
Exactly. 100% agree.
Okay. Well, thanks for going through that little exercise there.
Yeah.
Now, tell us some more about what you've learned and what you teach, because I know you have some very specific things, at least in my mind, that I want to go over, and I feel like you can teach us some good stuff.
Yeah. So I would actually love to teach you the concept that I call clear. Mm-hmm. This has been a game changer when it comes to tying in that acknowledgement of emotions and tying in that idea of who do I want to be and going, are these connected? And how do I handle these situations as they come up? Like you said, if you got fired from your job, or maybe you missed a payment on something, whatever it may be, how do you handle those kind of situations? So I love the clear model because it allows me to identify my emotions as well as the results that I'm getting, and then be able to pivot as needed to feel happier and to be that person that has their dream life, the thing we're all striving for, right? So clear stands for circumstance, language, emotion, action, and results. And the C, circumstance, is always neutral. It doesn't matter if your wife just had a baby. It doesn't matter if you lost your job. It doesn't matter if a parent died. It doesn't matter if you got the promotion. Every circumstance in our lives is neutral. What happens is if we move down the clear method, we move to language. And the language that we attach to a circumstance, the language we use in our head, is what provides meaning to whatever's going on. So that language is the focal point of everything else, because as soon as we attach language to a situation, emotion comes in almost instantaneously. So I'm going to use the example of getting in a car accident. I actually had this happen a summer ago, and I was rear-ended at a light. And I told you, I still have anger moments, right? So I got rear-ended, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like my language instantly was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this is such an inconvenience. You ran into me. I was already going at the light, so I don't know what you were doing. And I just started to tell myself this story using language in my head, which instantly led to these emotions of like, I'm really angry right now, right? Mm-hmm. So the next thing that would happen, it didn't happen with the story, I'll tell you, but so emotions lead to actions. So if I had kept the language and the emotions of anger, the action would have been getting out of my car, being frustrated, probably yelling at the individual, like, what are you thinking? Why aren't you paying attention? You were probably on your phone, whatever it is, triggering them, and then giving us both probably a result of a 2-hour ordeal where the cops are called and it's this big thing and a whole bunch of time wasted, all because I got out angry. Now that's not what happened, because I had the language, I had the emotions, and I went, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not who I want to be. Mm-hmm. I'm going to cut the action right there. So then I go back to my language and I go, okay, so the language, who do I want to be? Well, I use something called the declaration that I've customized for me. I help my clients make ones for them as well. But my declaration is, I'm an intuitive mentor, vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. So if I can catch myself in the emotion, go, okay, what language am I using? Great. Insert declaration here. I cannot be vibrant, abundant, and filled with light if I'm filled with rage about something that's happening. Now, I do not have to be happy that I got in a car accident and was rear-ended. Not at all. But I don't have to be angry either. I can neutralize it by using my language to go, well, wait a minute, let's just like calm down. Vibrant, abundant, filled with light. Awesome. I can be neutral about this and get out and be calm. So that neutralizes my emotions. I can be more calm. And I have an understanding of why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Then my action that actually happened was I got out of the car and I said, hey, are you okay? And it was really funny because she was like, yeah. Didn't ask me how I was, which would have normally triggered me in the past. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, and your car's okay? Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I'm okay. Look at my car. Yeah, my car's okay. I was like, I'm fine. My car's 22 years old. I was like, I'm fine just to like call it. Like, we're both good. The cars are good. I'm fine to call it if you are. And she's like, yeah, that's great. Gets in her car and drives off. And I'm like, well, she was more mad about it than I was. And I was the one that got rear-ended. But I was like, okay, it was a 5-minute inconvenience. And I was able to walk away being like, okay, great. Where in the past, I would have been angry. It would have been 2 hours. And I would have told this story to every single person I knew to try and justify my anger and that it was that person's fault. So using the clear method, again, circumstances neutral. So C, the language leads to emotions, which leads to your actions, which leads to the results that you get. So you can work that retroactively and go, when I behaved a certain way, what was happening? Go backwards up the model. Or you can get to a point where you can do it in real time, like I did for the car accident, and be like, well, wait a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. What language am I using here? Let's come in and cut that off the pass. And it allows you to explore your emotions and make the decision how you want to feel instead of feeling like you're out of control, which I often felt when I was angry all the time.
Mm-hmm. Very well put is what I meant. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Here's something I wanted to ask. Because, well, you kind of addressed it at the very beginning, but I know of a number of people that go through this. They say, all right, happiness mentor, happiness abounds. So you're telling me I'm supposed to be happy all the time, or I can be happy all the time. And if I'm not happy all the time, then there must be something wrong with me. What do you say to all that?
Well, first off, that means you have the belief that happiness is inherent and you should be happy all the time and that there is something wrong with you. That is not the case. Once you can craft that belief to a different way and be like, okay, it's not inherent, it's a learned skill, then you can learn said skill, first off. Second off, I'm a happiness mentor. I'm not happy all the time. Negative emotions are 50% of the emotions we feel as humans. I'm a human. You're a human. We're going to feel a range of emotions. But what I do is I help people go from being on the negative side of emotions, and I'm saying negative, right? You can learn from all of them, but we tend to deem them negative. You can go from being on the negative side of emotions almost all the time to the positive side of emotions. And if you do get a negative thing, you can come back, address it, do something like the clear model. I have several other techniques that I teach, and then come back and have the majority of your time on the positive side. It does not mean that you're perfect 100% of the time. It does not mean that you're going to be able to control the language in your mind 100% of the time. But what it means is equipping you with the tools so that you can have a happier life overall and day by day, as opposed to an unhappy life overall and day by day. And it's so interesting to me because I love when people ask me those kind of questions, because I can look and go, well, you're spending most of your time in the negative side. Why does it feel impossible to spend most of your time in the positive side? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's 100%, but you can swing on that pendulum and come back to the positive side so much quicker with the right tools and techniques versus living more on that negative side and being like, something's wrong with me because I'm not happy.
Exactly. So yeah, what you and I teach is, when you understand and acknowledge those emotions on that negative side, then you feel empowered to learn the skills of being happy and swinging to the other side. So that's excellent. I had a thought and it just ran from my mind. My goodness. Oh, so people can feel comfortable knowing that even when I learn these tools of how to be happy, if I wake up in the morning and I'm in a terrible mood, that doesn't mean I'm a terrible person. Right. Or if I do get rear-ended and I feel angry, that doesn't mean I'm a terrible person. So in other words, some people take it to the extreme. I've lived so long in the negative that once I learn to be happy, I should always be happy. But just like you said, reality is that we're going to experience the emotions. The thing that I try to teach in this podcast is it's okay to experience both sides, and you can choose which side you stick in, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, very good. What else do you want to teach us in the last couple minutes?
Oh, let's see. I feel like we had talked about something else and I can't remember it now. Do you have it in your notes?
Yeah, it's about the behaviors that we choose to hide our emotions or to protect us from the emotional pain. One of the things that you mentioned was that what starts as entertainment may turn into an escape, right?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Emotional buffering is what I like to call it. So essentially there are 6 things, there's more, but there's 6 top things that we do as humans to buffer our negative emotions. So I was talking earlier about like, there's this hole and I just put this manhole cover over it. Mm-hmm. Well, what we do is when we're suppressing our emotions and we don't want to face them, we don't want to deal with them, we just keep on throwing them in that hole. Well, sooner or later, that hole is going to overflow. And that's when we have blow up fights and things like that. And then we're like, oh gosh, what's wrong with me, right? Mm-hmm. The thing that can solve it is instead of suppressing our emotions, expressing them in a healthy way. But it's important to know how we're suppressing our emotions, because it's not like we're consciously being like, I'm just going to throw that in a hole and call it good. Mm-hmm. We don't do that. Instead, we do one of these 6 things. And I'll talk about them from probably the least likely to the most likely. So the least likely would be an overuse of like recreational drugs, right? It's an escape. Next would be over drinking. Maybe it's not alcoholism, but if you're ever like, oh, I'm going to have a glass of wine to take the edge off. Why are you taking the edge off, right? You're trying to numb your emotions. Then it's overeating. Always going to the fridge, opening it up because you might be feeling bored and you don't want to feel that boredom emotion. So you're trying to suppress it by eating. Then the most common, bottom 3 here, are binge watching. So are you still watching on Netflix? And a couple hours spent there, a whole weekend gone kind of thing. Ever scrolling on social media. You're like, okay, I'm just going to look at this for 5 minutes and 3 hours have gone by and you're still scrolling. And excessive gaming, whether that's video games, console streaming, or on your phone. Those are the 6 things that we do as humans to buffer our emotions. And all that means is we don't want to deal with these emotions, so we're doing other things to escape. Now, I love that you brought up the escapism versus entertainment, because like, depending on your beliefs, drinking can be an entertaining thing. Netflix is an entertaining thing. Going out for food is an entertainment kind of thing. Scrolling on social media, playing games, it's all based in entertainment. But when it crosses the line where it goes from entertainment to escapism, that's when you can know that you're buffering your emotions and really have an idea of like, okay, is this what I want to do? There's something I'm trying to run away from. There's something I don't want to address. And then again, you can make that choice. And there's days, full transparency as always, there's days where I'm like, I just want to watch TV. And I'm like, I had a rough day at work. I had some things happen. I need to adjust some things here, and here. And I don't want to focus on it right now. So I want to escape. I want to watch some TV. But I'm consciously making the choice instead of habitually buffering my emotions, because I know tomorrow I'm not going to watch TV. I'm going to get on that horse and I'm going to figure it out. And I will be back to where I need to be and back on this positive side of the pendulum, right? Mm-hmm. But the buffering piece, it's just so important to know what your buffering triggers are, like what it is when you're buffering. Is it overeating? Is it binge watching? Is it both of those things? And then making the decision of, okay, what am I trying to escape from? Do I want to focus on that now, or do I want to focus on it later? Because you're going to have to focus on it eventually.
Mm-hmm. Good job. Thank you. I'm glad you included all of that in here today.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Oh, no problem. This worked out. If people want to get a hold of you on social media to connect, how can they do so?
Yeah, so you can find me at my website, happinessabound.com. I'm also on Facebook. My Facebook page is Happiness Abound Blog. I have a free Facebook group called Happiness Abounders, where we do Jumpstart Your Happiness challenges every once in a while. So be sure to join there. And then, of course, I have my own podcast called Happiness Abound, over 500 episodes. So you can always check out and get more information there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining, Taylor. Everybody, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. There were very valuable tools and specific things mentioned that you can take and apply into your life to have more power over your emotions. Thanks again for joining the Champions of Self podcast, and we will talk to you next time.